That's right, just happy little ents, just awakened shrubs, going here and there, perhaps hoping one day to travel up the mountain and find more friends in a new home. Hate to leave so early, everyone, but it's time for this falcon to head back to his roost. Just got a full workday. Oh, just got off of... All right, third falcon, thank you so much for re-upping and for spending even a little bit of time here. It's appreciated, and we'll see you again. Rest up and feel awesome, and if you do get a weekend to yourself, enjoy your weekend. Yeah, Steve Ross appeared on the show, although I don't know if Steve has ever been as... public, or if he's ever been just sort of as out there, like continuing the line, so to speak. Not that he has to. I mean, it's not... He's his own person. But I know that when he was younger, Steve was showing up on Bob's shows, and actually he would be like the one that would be sent out to do painting tutorials and to gauge or evaluate or sort of make the Ross Art Instructors series. So maybe one day we can make awesome mountains. Now, of course, in our imaginations, all of our mountains are perfect and exactly what they need to look like and be. So translating it in an art sense is something else. And that's why, of course, we use good old-fashioned MS Paint. And as you can see, earlier tonight, I was over on D&D Time for one of their sessions, and myself, who is playing a Blossomer Florin, that's kind of modeled after some kind of viney snapdragons, and a fungal Florin were trapped inside of a gelatinous cube. And so I felt a little inspired to recreate that in MS Paint, as we were down in a sewer. And we're kind of absorbed by it. Orcs, your new emote got accepted. And Orcs, what is your new emote? Would you kindly share that? Oh my goodness. Ah! Sail Orc Moon. Oh my goodness. 10 out of 10. Would stare at again. That is amazing, Orcs. Oh my gosh. I believe my day has been continued to be brightened. Not that it was a dark day or anything, but my day has continued to be brightened by the presence of Sail Orc Moon. That is great. Well, kudos to you for the inspiration and steering that course to show that orcs love and can be loved as well. And to whomever was doing the art, because it is fantabulous. All right, so we're going to need a new... There we go. We're going to need a new canvas here. Or I'm going to tuck this away because we have to do a little bit of work first. I know, work. It's Friday night. So I thought it was supposed to be like a TGIF. That's right. See, the greenskins need love. Goblins? They're adorable little short stacks. Now, that's if they're not trying to shank you. Unless that's your thing. In which case, then that there you go. Combo. iTyrant Games, hey, welcome. We're just getting the workshop going, and Orcs Make Beautiful Lovers was showing off his new emote, Sail Orc Moon. Oh gosh. Alerves it. You're gonna make orc kiss cat butt? Oh, the goblin song from that miniseries? Oh, there we go. Crowdfunded is showing that orcs can also enjoy cats as pets and understand that cat butt is the highest compliment that you can receive. Oh gosh. And I have one right over here too. She's resting and licking her paw and then her face with the paw. Luna Light Lady. Oh, whoa. What's this? Welcome. Welcome, Luna Light. We are going to begin exploring a region that last week we started laying the groundwork for in our workshop. Through a series of random prompts and our own imaginations, we ended up on paper creating just several zones. I wasn't worried about the animals or the people that live there. Just what are the natural features? And just step by step, going through a process of some random rolls in our imaginations, we culminated to drawing. Oh, crowdfunded! Thank you for that gift. Anytime a predatory animal presents its vulnerable parts to you, it's a huge compliment. See, iTyrant gets it, and that's why beholders are trusting creatures, because they expose they expose their eyes to you, and eyes are very vulnerable things. And so the next time that a beholder looks at you, you should approach it with your arms open and just give it a big hug and kind of, ruffle its eye stalks. Oh, woo! I don't know how, but you need to involve a flumph. A flumph. And yes, I will share an awoo as well. And isn't it amazing? I want to reinforce, every night that we're in the workshop, we put in a couple hours of work. And when I say work, we're conversing. We're doing some brainstorming. We're letting the dice decide a couple things for us. Or at least are offering us prompts. And then we're exercising our own imaginations around them. This led on Wednesday to map out the frontier town with all of its ideas, which is located on the map over right around here, in between the mountain area and the lake, the glacial lake, which included even developing this own. We didn't even map this out. This just came out of our brains. This monastery carved into the face of the glacier that is feeding the lake. And then, of course, the lake comes down, goes into a delta, and feeds the swamp. And we made the swamp map last night, and this is only part of it. So what you see here, boop, 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 what you see here is just this little part of the map, because I wanted to go over some basic map making, and we were considering, all right, given the prompts that we developed for this area, who are the people? And a map won't necessarily show that, but we went over some basic art, because look, this is MS Paint, and there's powerful tools. There's Wonder Draft. There's Incarnate. There's World Forge, I believe, makes maps too. Powerful tools, awesome tools. If it comes down to it, though, and you only have MS Paint, that's all you need to make a coherent map. And especially one that's vibrant and colorful and is easy enough for your players to follow. Now, tonight, we are going to do the same, except for the forested area here. And we're going to develop a society around the sentient race, the homebrew sentient race that we created over the course of this project. Because it just happened naturally. And so everything we've done hasn't been convoluted. It's been organic growth. It's been, so the society would probably have this because of this. And every time we make a connection like that, as a dungeon master and as a decision maker, we are stronger in our presentation to our players. And if we are going to offer this region as a sandbox to let them explore, maybe there's no real storyline. There doesn't have to be. There certainly could. But even if this is just, go out and explore. Let's spend a couple months and explore this area. See who the people are, help them, do whatever. You know, it's all a bunch of side quests. That's fine. That's D&D as well. But now we know how things worked out on a timetable, on a geological timetable, on a civilized society timetable, on an evolutionary timetable, because there has been some advanced evolution going on in this region for hashtag reasons. There was this civil war, so we can explore, we can explore societal differences or where they've made peace. And by taking our time and by thinking of this, there's just so much that we are uncovering for ourselves, and we're slowly incorporating into our noggins, so that by the time we finish this project, you could run this region as its own sandbox at home. I mean, all this stuff is made freely available to you on Discord, and if you ever want to borrow it, you don't even need to beg or borrow. It's a beg or steal. Just borrow it. Have fun with it. And I hope this gives you something to think about. If you like what we did with the swamp and everything else is like, that's fine too. Has our brainstorming helped you? Then yes, we have done our jobs. Our night jobs. Well, if you're in Europe, then our early morning jobs. And if you're in Australia, our afternoon jobs. Sorry, I missed out on chat a little bit here. So we needed a flump. We're saying a woo. Yo, so I gotta get ready for streaming. I'll be back probably to raid. All right, Hypnotic, if you haven't left already, have fun and have an amazing stream, and we hope to see you back. Beholder's best evil mastermind in the Underdark. The flump should be stalked and eradicated for being evil in their goodness. Nothing needed in the Underdark is good. Nothing. Luna Light Lady says, I am more of a player than a DM, to be honest. I love my random interesting characters. I just wish I had more D&D to play. Well, Luna Light, I don't know if you're on our Discord at all. If so, we have a looking for group area, and if you put a post up there, then there's others who are either looking for groups themselves, and you can contact each other, or there are people who are running. They're looking for players. And that could end up being a resource for you if you would like to pursue it. As a person of culture, I like the idea of an area dominated by carnivorous plant girls. Hot culture. And we could even incorporate something like that, Luna Light, as we go through the creative process here. There is an LFG on Reddit. There are various threads on Roll20 as well. Yes, IRL schedules can be dark and evil indeed. I'm not biased for playing a Venus flytrap-based plant girl. Well, we did have a swamp that was the source of a meteor impact, and that's where the Venus flytrap came from. IRL. Dun dun dun. Are they aliens? Maybe. Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. All right, so with this image in mind, let's transfer a little bit of the content that we generated. This area, where we're working at right now, came about when we combined, or when we rolled a forest and a swamp. Now, we didn't pineapple pen them together into one squishy region. Instead, we separated them out, and due to the, so we said there's a totem pole. Okay, what's next? An intact obelisk? Okay, we can work with that. A battlefield where lingering fog occasionally assumes humanoid forms. And boom, this was the ignition for creating the whispers. which is the current incarnation of a group of nomads that came to this region a long time ago, chasing this falling star. Perhaps even predicting it would fall here, finding it, and then they succumbed to the mutagenic effects that it had. Not that, I mean, they're unhappy people. They're just different than how they were. And this then created a whole cascade where we put some some tenants down for maybe their capital or for the region as a whole. And let's transfer some of that over here. We know for sure that the area is going to be dominated by forest. What else? What other biome could exist here? Looking at the map, and as a dungeon master, if you say, look, this is obviously mountain forest, have at it if you're inspired. Now, what we did for the swamp, because we knew it was swamp, and it may be arbitrary, I enjoy looking at 2 biomes everywhere. Just because it forces an interaction and it causes us to think. Could we force that and be, well, instead of coast, we could call it shore if it's a lake, or with all the rivers. But we ended up getting Arctic, which works out because we had this glacier that was sort of moving in from the north here, and even being a threat, let alone a source of water. And that had a link. Ooh, suddenly the mystery deepens because there is this shard that is also shared, a shared shard, to the monastery when we were sort of micro-developing our frontier town. So I want to roll a second biome, and let's find out what else is here. That's going to be a D8, and so let's make a placeholder for it. I rolled a 2, so we'll find out what that is. Now, we have the form of government. We already ruled that. So unless we wanted to create some sort of a secondary area that wasn't ruled the same, and I want to be consistent, we ended up rolling that this was a militocracy for the forest people. It is run by the military, and that's what led to the prompt of there having been some kind of a war, or a civil war, between the 2 different clans of whispers that we had. Now, there is one notable monument in the area, which is an intact obelisk with, and I put something, because it could be symbols, writing, a warning, a prayer, just whatever. Something is written on this intact obelisk. And we can decide what we would like that to be. Now, because arbitrarily, you don't have to do this, I like three features to an area. Small, medium, or large. Whatever we're talking about. What are 3 things that our eyes would just focus on? One of those is the intact obelisk. Now let's roll 2d20. One for the other monument and one for the weird locale. 7 and 4. I'm going to put these placeholders, and we'll find out what this means here in just a little bit. Now, the dominant race are going to be the Forest Whispers, with the minority race being the Swamp Whispers. If we wanted to include another sentient race, we could. Just remember, as a DM, nothing stops you from saying this is an all-human world. Only humans exist. And so you can say, well, I offer either the variant human or the standard human. Or you could say, because your players are like, whoa, hold on. Cosmetically, only humans exist. You can play an elf, but you're a human. Because the elf then is more of a reflection of your upbringing in a particular culture or a particular region. And so you do not have to, mechanically or fluff-wise, offer every race in the player's handbook or beyond. You can limit it if you want. And if you just want the Whispers to be the only sentient race here, I mean, humans are, as far as we know, well, I mean, depending, maybe intelligent. Well, again, I don't know if we get into apes or dolphins. If you get what I'm saying, we are our own kind of people. And we fill up the entire world, let alone a part of one. So the race relations are harmonious. And that's how we came to the understanding that that this is ruled by a militocracy, and the swamp is ruled by an oligarchy, and that was done very peacefully. That incorporated actually part of the forest council as well. But the harmony is because they have found harmony amongst each other. Whatever their differences were have been set aside through war or negotiations or the like, and now the area is whole again. And that could very well end up being a part of this this doom prophecy that the swamp folk are predicting. Now, the ruler's status in the forest, this was a cabal that seized power openly. And that also bled into the fact that we have this faction that wanted to end the war. And they did so. And the people who actually wanted to end the war were the military themselves. I mean, because they're the ones who are in the front line fighting and dying and everything else. So you can see the development, one line of text at a time, one prompt at a time. We're making an entire story. And now we're going to refine these people in this forested society. What's a notable trait? There is an important library or archive here. And that comes down to the fact that these are the survivors of a split group of nomads that came in here. The first half were lost in the swamp. The others pushed on, and then they finally found the remnants of this fallen star and have built upon it. And when you combine that with the fact it's known for its godlessness, that could be either hedonism, where if we consider that moral tenets are derived from religion, then they're godless in that sense, or it's just more of a secular society, or maybe agnostic in that case, or they study religion, but not as a matter of faith, as a matter of understanding, more of maybe a historical take on religious books. They look at the same books the swamp folks do, but they don't see the patterns in the stars being mystical. They see the patterns in the stars of that's how things work. And the current calamity is that there is a suspected vampire infestation. Now, I put the quotes around vampire because we don't have to take that literally as in there are vampires that are sucking their blood. Well, they don't necessarily have blood, but you get what I'm saying. We have some sort of a sentient parasitic being that is threatening or scaring and or feeding on or reproducing through these people. And what could that end up being? Maybe that's where we get the Venus flytrap things, right? So, something evolved, and they're starting to eat the locals. Sorry, I totally missed out on some chat here, everyone. So Hypnotic Gamer went to stream. You're more of a player than a DM, so hopefully you can find a game, Lunalight. Zuler Pie, will this forest have some of those innocent flowers that can turn into a swarm of stinging wasps? I remember a stream ages ago with those. It was great. Well, wait, was that the Tuesday game a long time ago that had that? Zuler Pie, are you remembering that? Ivlon says more forest. I am sort of here, says Fallon. Well, welcome, even if you're only sort of here. Foothills says iTyrant. Luna Lady says, what about an area where the Fey realm has messed with the natural appearance of the place and the trees are massive flowers? Keep that in mind, Lunalight, because we can work with a lot of these ideas. Because I do want this to be in the realm of the fantastic, or at least the different. It doesn't have to be highly magical, and magic is the explanation for everything. I certainly want us to think outside of the box. When we develop this, I don't want this to be a mountainous dwarven kingdom, or like a clandom. I don't want this to be an elven forest. We have a mountain, we have a forest, but let's look at how we can make this ours. If we're dungeon masters and we're going to present this realm to players to just explore, develop, have a bunch of side quests, or play in the sandbox, what can we do to set it aside and make it ours in its incarnation? How about some graffiti on the obelisk besides the ancient script that says Deacon was here? Yeah, so we could maybe there was an uprising, right? Maybe that's part of this vampiric infestation. These vampires, however we want to conceptualize them, which is going to be part of our mental exercises here, have been defacing things. Have been terrorizing or threatening. Time for bed. Got to be up in 7 hours. GM Vault, have an amazing sleep. Thank you for stopping by and sharing some humor and chat with us. Please be well. It was a Tuesday stream. A PC died to the flowers. Yes. Yeah, that was very early on in the Tuesday game, Zuler Pie. Now, we didn't really have a name for the forest capital area or the forest region, so that is open should we find some inspiration for it. There is a religious building or something akin to it where there is a library dedicated to religious study. And you know what? I'll tell you what. The frontier town had the same. The frontier town also had this crystal shard, which was a notable feature. Weird locale. Our swamp had the giant crystal also, and our forest shares a similar library dedicated to religious study. When we were making... This stuff writes itself, everyone. When we were making the frontier area, we said that there's this monastery that is almost a... they're not like a doomsday cult per se, but they're an odd cult. They've retreated into the glacier. They explore it, and the glacier itself is a very weird place. And they also have this crystal, like the swamp folk do. And they also they have this library dedicated to religious study, as does this forest. So we have this temple that has aspects of the nomads, such as they've survived or gone on to thrive. That could make this monastery an even more interesting place once more of these puzzle pieces are put together. Maybe the monastery has somehow stolen, absconded, dug up, or copied these cultural markers, these historical documents, and are incorporating it into its own study of magic and death and other things, as that's kind of the glacier's realm. And in even this appreciation, maybe they don't see the fallen star as the end itself. Maybe they see it as some sort of nascent god, or if it's not a god ready to be born, it's one that died and fell to the earth. And if this is kind of a fatalistic faith, then they were able to take this information and adapt it in itself, retreat away from the main frontier folk, who are probably still carrying the tenets of the religion from whence they came, retreated to the glacier and have studied and pored over these artifacts and these old nomadic teachings, which could run counterintuitive to the established faith of the frontier town. Someone just gave me a copy of Xanathar's for my fantasy grounds, so I can incorporate the This Is Your Life into my background work. Oh, yeah. There's excellent background stuff in Xanathar's, Bubonic. I think you'll have a lot of fun with that. And the tavern name is the Roaring Star. And that's partly where we got this fallen star and what brought the nomads into this area, too. So this is the place to be, and it caters to a specific race or guild. Well, there's only one race per se, which are the Whispers. And if it says guild, then maybe instead of a guild, it's more, if it's a militocracy, this place could be a military bar. Or this could be where the scholars gather. Sort of like an exclusive Starbucks for them to write and read and do all this while they're sipping on beverages and eating food. And so that's something else that's a lingering question for us to answer. If the main, if you're going to go to this capital area, the main place that you would want to go is called the Roaring Star, but it caters, maybe they only enter, or maybe there's a general area, but there's a super special section. By the way, Coffee Cat, thank you very much for the raid and welcome. Coffee Raid! So we do not need this any longer, okay? We have taken our inspiration. Let's reduce this down. Let's bring up our prompts here. We have to fill in a couple little things. For the terrain types in the player's handbook, it's going to bring us to page 68. And the reason for that is because druids and rangers share 8 broad biomes for which they have mechanical effects. Thereby, there are 8 biomes that we can input into our world, or interpret anyway, that could allow for these mechanics to take place. And we have a forest, and the other notable feature would be 2, not Arctic, but we have coast. So the water, so in this, so we have coast, but this is going to be more shore, like the lake shore. The water is going to be important to them here as well. It's been an awesome night so far, Coffee Cat. High energy, and we're dusting our brains off again, and we are doing some critical thinking to set up this forested society. Now let's hop over to the Dungeon Master's Guide. A lot of this was already rolled, but we do need to figure out what our second monument is and what our weird locale is going to be. We rolled a d20 twice. Our monument is going to be number 7. And number 7 is a ruined or toppled obelisk. Uh-oh. Was this a casualty of the war? Is this something that represents the fall of the star? So they actually built it and they purposely toppled it to let things scatter as nature would take it. What happened? Did this cabal end up toppling it in its to seize power, if only to then achieve peace through it? Did it represent was it a religious obelisk that was toppled? And then this other obelisk with one more of statements, secular statements of science or fact, erected in its place. These questions and more. Now, what is our weird locale? Something strange is afoot here. We rolled a 4. That is a boulder carved with talking faces. A boulder carved with talking faces. Now, what could that mean to these people? What could that mean? Is it, it's a weird locale. Did this boulder exist before? Is the boulder actually the comet that fell? And if so, why does it have talking faces? Or the appearance of it? And an answer could lie with how this glacier formed as well. Because if we go back to what we did last week, the first region, or like the first area in this region, we rolled Arctic Underdark. And the monuments are faces carved into a mountainside or cliff, and giant statues carved out of a mountainside or cliff with wild magic. And so we're saying, okay, let's say that there's just this wind that rips through the interior of the glacier, creating an ever-expanding and collapsing, because of course with the growth of the glacier too, series of caverns and caves. Hey, Pneumatica, welcome. And there's all these faces. So what if the faces are a part of this wild magic or something that's happened? The glacier's containing or causing wild magic. And as we were exploring over the course of the week, the glacier is filled with the spirits of the dead who are causing manifestations of these faces in the ice. Now, there's a big dragon face that's carved, that's a part of the monastery. But as we're going through and developing this, faces, everything with faces. So now, if we have a boulder with faces, can we link this area with perhaps the disaster in the lost city that we have implied exists inside the glacier, that's actually the central source of the ice? You see how this can all come back around? How all of this can just weave into a narrative that's there for us to explore ourselves as dungeon masters, let alone if we were to unleash a group of 4 or 5 PCs into this sandbox. You know, we have this sentient race that's primarily cloistered to just the region in which they live. Or the area, I should say. The area in which they live on the region. The Coffee Cat, it writes itself. Everything is interconnected, and we have a mystery, we have a history, DuckTales, woo. All right, so this is giving us, this is all of our prompts now. And from here, we can do what we did last night with our Swamp Society. And let's just talk about topics. Let's bring it all together. Who are these people? How do they live? How do they rule themselves? What is their society like? What do they eat? What's their agriculture if they have it? And once we get all this down, then in part 2, we can map this out. Maybe we can add some extra stuff, because now, once we discuss it, now that we get to see it manifest in front of us, that could give us extra ideas. That could help us find inspiration for more details about these people. Orc, hello! Greetings to you. That is a very cute emote. And of course, that's a very adorable bowl of guacamole next to your name. All right, so something to think about in this society. We have a forest and the coast are going to be very prominent and very and very important to these people. So we're probably going to see the capital city is going to be maybe tucked in between rivers, maybe along. You know, we get kind of, well, using local examples. We have Cleveland, we have Toledo. Right, these are 2 big cities that are along the lake. Even if you go down to Cincinnati, that's along the Ohio River. You even go to Columbus, that's along a river as well. Hi, Tyrant. It could be guac, or if you prefer, it could be salsa verde. So we can end up placing the main part of the forested people's society because the lake is going to be very important. And in fact, the boulder might even be found in the lake as a little island or something. This is just a prompt. This is not an end-all be-all. This doesn't show roads, doesn't show political boundaries, doesn't show territories of animals and migration patterns. This is all inspiration that is helping us to find more detail, step and step and step at a time. Call it Fort Starfall? Sure. We need a name for it. All right, so let's think about this. So living now, when we say living in the forest, it doesn't have to be densely packed rainforest or you know some sort of you know, Four Seasons deciduous fantasy arboresque setting. If you look at many areas, they could be considered to be heavily forested. I mean, look at a map of your own state. In fact, I'll even bring up. Oh, that's a town called Forest. So if we bring this up, now especially down here in Appalachian, Ohio, we have a lot of state forests and forested areas. All right, as we zoom in, a lot of recreation. If you look at a map, you see all the green, and even if we come up here. This isn't pinned on a map, but if we look closely, right, there's all kinds of forested areas, enough that it is getting it's getting pinged as a wildlife area. If we come up here, look, even up by Cleveland, we're still finding forested areas, and this is very heavily developed. You know, let's come out my way. There's watersheds, there's creeks. And so if we're talking about a town, right? So here's this. There's, even within the city, there's parks and there's some state forests and the like. Heck, look at Cedar Point. Cedar Point is a big old amusement park, but it has tons of trees that provide shade and just, it makes it look really nice. And while you have the big steel coasters out here on the peninsula, it's still a very natural place to walk through. Now, at one point in time, I mean, this could be apocryphal or it could be true history. It was said that back when the Midwest was the frontier, that in Ohio, a squirrel could go from Lake Erie to the Ohio River without ever having to touch the ground. Such was the densely packed forest. And I mean, is that true or not? I can't tell you. I'm neither a historian nor a naturalist, but it can convey. Do you want a super densely packed mega area? You know, in our prompt here, I just colored all this green because I figured, well, it's forest and there's probably going to be more trees than not. On our little map here, it could be a lot of grassland or farmland that is open as well. This is just, you know, it's the view from 10,000 feet up or whatever. You know, I'd say as a bird flies, is a pretty high up altitude for a bird. So I want to make sure that we don't just focus that this is green and every square inch has to be brush and forest. It doesn't have to, but the forest is a prominent feature here. It's, part of it connects to the swamp, Bobicus. This way. But where we're talking about, it's going to be featured here. I think it's going to be more temperate, Zulurpai. And I know we were talking about a lot of things, you know, okra and crawdads and, you know, in the subtropical Gulf Coast, you know, Louisiana style stuff for the swamp, which we could either modify or just say, yeah, it's its own thing. Although I don't think, well, I don't know, because we said that the mushrooms act kind of like a mangrove, and mangroves could be, could be. Mangroves are a tropical plant. This could be warmer, and hence the threat of the glacier grows and grows. So we could have, it could be more, if it's not temperate, we could be getting into subtropical. Well, wait, would it go tropical, subtropical, or is subtropical come before tropical? Let me check my... That is in Russian. There we go. Subtropical. So when we look at our map, and this is a good thing to do, by the way, also as a DM, determine, you know, no matter where you live, which country, if you want to create something, then equate it to what you know or what you're familiar with. If you grow up in Florida and you want to create an adventuring area, and you can see, all right, ooh, so the climate or the weather could be different, but we're seeing a general trend here in this subtropical band. You can create a country or a region with the information that you know about. So, you know what? I don't think we assigned a band to it. This could be subtropical, but there's this supernatural glacier that's fueled by the spirits of the dead that is causing some disruptions. And wouldn't that be interesting, right? It's really warm except where it's not. Pine Barrens? Yeah, we can make it a pine place, very piney. And if I recall correctly, pines need an acidic soil. Or at least, I mean, not like super, like, dissolve you acidic soil, but they need a more acidic soil than not. Which could then have other interesting effects on the plants or creatures that live there. Yeah, very bad for other plants. And so you would find, you know, mostly just those plants or those style. And that could very well be then, Bobicus, if we so with what you said there, this would mean that as a society, because let's build this forest society. G. Shuford, thank you for providing that, and welcome. What kind of a society then would grow up there? What would grow in the soil, if anything? We probably have a dominant species of tree. Pine is a softer wood, not necessarily hardwoods like oak and, you know, walnut, chestnut, that sort of a thing. But the trees could grow very quickly, perhaps. What's causing the acidity in the soil that the plants have adapted to? And we could even tie that then with the comet that fell and struck and carved out this region. Maybe it aspects of it sort of seeped into the soil. Or if it came to rest in this lake is the remnants of this icy comet that, you know, impacted, rolled, and then melted. The water or the other chemicals that had come off of this have you know, inhabit the lake and have seeped into everything. And it may not be as it was before, but the influence was already there, and the plants that have grown back after that strike have adapted to it. Of course, it gets colder as you go up in altitude. The glacier is higher up than the two towns. Yeah, and we haven't set a scale. I mean, is it 2,000 miles? Is it 20 miles? The glacier we've pretty well established is supernatural. So we can place this glacier anywhere. We can have a Georgian glacier. That actually sounds like a really good drink that you'd want on a really warm summer day in the south. Yeah, I'll take a Georgian glacier. So let's see, that'd probably be some peach schnapps, or is that too obvious? What would be in a Georgian glacier? I'll let you talk about it. Pines grow everywhere here in South Carolina. They're super easy to grow, which is why they're largely the favorite of timberland owners. Yeah, so it grows quickly, and these could even be super. In fact, you know, because we're talking about an area, Shuford, or however, if you'd like me to say G or whatever, let me know. You know, we're talking about an area that was struck by a meteor, and there is a swamp. I think it's on the North and South Carolina border, where there's an area that happened, and that's the natural habitat of Venus flytraps. And that's the only place in the world you find them, is in this cosmic encounter area. And so we could maybe even consider, let's draw on that. What if, what if we are in the Carolinas area? It's still warm enough that we would get this kind of interesting fungal mangrove swamp off the coast. There's going to be a ton of pines, and of course we can provide a supernatural growth to it too. And also, so clearly, the Forest Society is known for making furniture. You can cut a pine about every 20 years, whereas most hardwoods take 40 plus. Yes. Babika says, okay, so the reason the pine barrens are so acidic is because the soil is so sandy, allowing water to carry away minerals and organic matter, which provide the alkalinity to counteract the natural acidity of rain. So the forest people could have orchards, peach, oranges, apples, and so on. Okay, let's put these ideas down. We're having awesome conversations. I'm falling behind here. So if we're talking about this, you know, an adventuring party in D&D may not necessarily know or care about the acidity level of the soil. And so we know that as a dungeon master. How can we reflect that? Most people call you Shu. All right, then if I'm most people, then I will also call you Shu. Hey, Lazy Monkey, welcome. So what grows here? Pines, peaches, apples, and citrus. Acidic soil. The water washes away much of the organic remnants of decomposition. Perhaps this is an influence from the comet that fell here, and not just geology. Abundant wood that grows quickly and is the dominant tree species can be used for housing, warfare, right? If the main area is called Fort whatever, it could very well be mostly made of wood. and of pine, which is, I mean, it's a soft wood, but it doesn't mean it's like balsa wood or anything. Housing, warfare, trades, and even a navy for the lake and or filtered sea. Over time, yes, it will, Shu, though the society was actually blended into the ecology by the presence of this comet that fell here. It impacted where this swamp is, and that's why you have this shattered mountain range. And also why we have a swamp, because it's a depressed area. Then we were saying that this celestial thing that fell ended up sort of rolling and gouging out a canyon along the way before it sort of settled here, pushing up a bunch of dirt. So the mountains we have here are more like the Rockies. You know, this is like continental plates that have kind of, you know, an impact, or in this case, it would be like, you know, like this, with the meteor or the comet falling here. Then we have this very interesting, like almost, you know, perfectly not hemispherical, totally tubular. Anyway, a half pipe-ish canyon before it came to rest. And then this is more like Appalachia right here. You know, there are mountains, but, you know, it's rocks, and it is sort of like a rolled up presence of the dirt and the rocks and everything else that was in the path here. Before then, apparently this thing either melted down or it just sort of was absorbed over time. There's a bunch of nomads that were chasing it into the region, followed it here, and over time, the natives succumbed to the mutagenic properties of this fallen star and have become a kind of will-o-wisp people. And so we went through the exercise of actually making a playable will-o-wisp style race, called them Whispers. And so they became a part of the terrain and reflected it, because the terrain was also changed by this fallen star. Possibly cedar as well. I'd imagine there's a war-centric civilization. They'll have a large pine plot, man-made, so they can harvest quickly, growing wood, while also leaving more natural wooden areas with oaks and cedars for hardwood to make more lasting structures. And so yes, this could be a part of it as well. Abundant wood that grows quickly, perhaps even myriad tree farms or policies of replacing cut trees. That would make the Central Lake saltwater because it has no outlet. That isn't certain, though it's likely, says Pneumonica. It could be more salty, that's true, because there's not necessarily... I mean, if there's drainage, it's probably underground, and it is getting, you know, a lot of things here. We could give the lake a different property. Maybe the lake is salty, but it's not salt water. It could be brackish. If that's the case, then maybe they have to fight off some mushrooms. Or what if the lake over all this time has become more salty and is threatening the environment and the people living there, and so they have to go and try and find a way to transplant these desalinating mushroom mangrove things that are turning the salt water into brackish water and fresh water along the coast. And in an ironic twist, to get the mushrooms to take, they actually need to have a saltier water, because the mushrooms need the salt in order to spread their spores and to extract what they need. And so they're caught in this really weird mix of the water is getting more mineral, or it's getting more, I don't know, toxic or out of balance, but it's not enough to have the natural filter be here. So what do? Salt dragons, says King. Welcome, King Von Ale. The difference in my experience varies greatly. Man-made pine groves, which can be huge, will lack lots of bramble and brush and usually nest up against a hardwood area, and that seems to make good hunting where the two types meet too. But natural woods will often have lots of brambles, something so thick as to be impassable, but more game opportunity and usually a good water source like a creek, which I see you have. If you're talking warlike society and forest management, Copaced? Unless that's a mistype. Forests go hand in hand with bow making, staff, spear shafts, etc. If the lake's on karstic terrain, the endohuric sink lake will lose more water by ground seepage than by evaporation, which will carry much of the mineral content with it, so the lake won't be heavily saline. The forest people could pump the water out to keep it only slightly brackish. That Google has the answers. Yes, it does. It's very true. Also, spears are generally weapons of choice. Good call. Capus. Oh, thank you for the clarification. Man, y'all are a bunch of nerds talking. I say it with all due respect. This is why we get together and we learn and we discuss things. Because, yeah, where are they? You know, here in the Swamp Society, this is more, you know, they're fishing. There's these cranberry bogs. There's... you know, there's rice and stuff that they're growing, even on the floating islands that are just sort of going with the current, with the glacial melt coming down this way, and then the tidal waters pushing up. And so the swamp has this constant slow Coriolis effect, except the central island, which is fixed in place by that crystal spire, that ice shard. And so here, yeah, I mean, you're going to get a lot of ground seepage, especially if we have a lot of roots and stuff. You know, it could get washed out to sea eventually. It could still that could be an imperiling part of this society, though, because water is so crucial. You can't have a civilization without water. I mean, unless it's a very specific circumstance. I mean, heck, look at Dark Sun, even. Never give me a research project if you don't want a dissertation on the matter. Pneumonica, bring it. Use all them fancy $2 words. What you knows. I can take it. Most recently, I've been looking into the viability of armors and weapons and what's most plausible for various situations. So, Shu, a very brief history of the region that was, whatever, insert normal terrain here. At one point in time, nomads were following some sort of a prophecy or a belief they had, set a semi-permanent settlement here, waited for this comet to fall from the sky. It did. It crashed in the swamp and then eventually, you know, went into this forest area and came to a rest. As the nomads followed the course of this fallen star in the aftermath, half the nomads were lost in the swamp, and the others who would go onto the forest just continued on without them. These nomads then, each in their own biomes, developed and evolved because of this mutagenic effect of this fallen comet. And while they are a race known as the Whispers, who are these will-o-wisp people, at some point in time, maybe they lost contact with each other, they found contact with each other, maybe established a tenuous relationship, something happened that we haven't made up yet. Something happened and there was a civil war between the two tribes of Whispers, the swamp people and the forest people, which only just recently, and when I say that could have been, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, because, some of this we're talking about a geological timescale. At some point in time, they had a civil war that came to an end. And the swamp people are an oligarchy who are ruled, who is a council by leaders pulled from each floating island, including someone asked to represent the forest people in the swamp as a part of swamp decision making. The forest people are a militocracy because the military stepped up and said, we have to stop this. In fact, what probably could have led to that is if there's a lot of these people dying, they probably noticed that the glacier was being affected and was growing. And this glacier will wipe everyone out as it continues to push towards the sea. And so now we are in a relative era of peace between the tribes. We have this fantastic landscape that has been marked by a comet that fell, that has these magical radiation properties. And here we go. We're making a society now of these people who live in the aftermath. By the way, in this valley, as we rolled last week, everything here grows big. Think, big world in Mario 3. If you spend too much time here, you will just grow. And so here, in the middle, in this connecting forest area, we're probably seeing, even if they're pines, we're probably seeing pines that are the size of redwoods. We're seeing a lot of dire animals. We're seeing chickens with 4 legs. We're seeing whatever, trout or, huge, like dog-sized trout or whatever. Everything here just grows really large as a part of the effect of this area. 5-foot mosquitoes. Nope, run away. Shuford? Yeah, we're talking D&D. It could be whatever we want. Yeah, we do have mutated plants and animals. Heck, in the glacier, we have just magic eating plants. So, chicken farmers in the valley suddenly discover they're tending a cockatrice. Yeah, and so this is giving us this prompt is allowing for us as dungeon masters to have free reign. We want 4-legged chickens. We want dire centipedes or whatever. Do we want pine trees that may not necessarily grow quickly if they're away from this lake, from the resting place of this meteor or comet remains, but they just grow super huge. So these people aren't necessarily warlike any longer, or at least they're not practicing war. But they, we're probably not talking a lot of metal. I'm sure there's tons of metal that was scraped up in the impact that still exists in the chunks of rocks in the broken, like the kind of shard impact crater mountains, or even that was pushed up here in this semicircle when the comet came rolling through. Now, something to bring up as well, these people are more rational and secular or agnostic in their belief structures, which could have been, let me type this on screen, which could have been a reason for the war, since the swamp folk are more highly belief driven and religious. Both respect and don't doubt the comet fell and realize their nomadic ancestors chased it here or met it here. However, perhaps because they live on or by the remains / core of the fallen star, these pragmatic people approach it with a discerning eye for science and history to understand it and their origins. This is definitely playing into their culture, and this is going to have an influence in their society, right? The structures in the swamp are more dilapidated, or at least they look dilapidated, because, you know, people are living on pole houses. You know, the islands are still kind of swirling around, so things are flexible. You know, nothing is like super permanent, and there's not a lot of stone that they're using to build. Here, they can use stone, they can use a lot of wood. Things are more structured, more analytical. This could also be why a societal problem is the acidity or alkalinity of their water, and the swamp people are just like, we're happy to have fresh water to drink without getting throat leeches. Meanwhile, these people are like, well, we're 7.2 pH. This could be disastrous for our calculations. It doesn't mean that everyone is literate. It doesn't mean everyone is super smart. Racially, when we developed them last week, off of all the random prompts and all the brainstorming we were doing, they're both a strength-based race. The swamp folk get a +1 wisdom. The forest folk get +1 intelligence. And these are also elements that we can take into their society as well. Several things established here. A prophecy from somewhere that told them to be here when the meteorite gets here. Magical radiation mutations, adaptive life, and finally an encroaching world danger. So this may be a bit of a trope, but the way I would see it, the comet is a living psychic entity with magical properties that has rooted itself into the earth and is projecting psychic powers and magical roots, maybe literal to some degree, to exert some control over the region as it spreads like a cosmic parasite. And it may be that the higher intelligence of civilized creatures does keep them from being completely subverted, but not unchanged. That we can weave that into our narrative as well, Shuford. And part of it, if you're only just joining us, because we've been drip feeding lore and just asking ourselves questions and coming up with answers from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday last week, and then Wednesday, Thursday, and now today, Friday of this week. The glacier, in the center of the glacier, is a city that could have at one time been a prominent city. But something happened, and it could even be related. This maybe is even where the nomads came from. They left the city on this religious pilgrimage from the south. The city is in the middle of the glacier and is the home to this force that is having the ice continue to grow. And on the map, you can see that there's some black rocks representing some igneous rocks. And when the comet fell, an idea that was thrown out is the reverberation shattered a tectonic plate, and it just caused this volcano to constantly erupt and caused a lot of cold, like a mini ice age in this area. Does it have to be that? No, I could go through with this and repaint it, or if maybe the volcano is now dormant. But in the middle of the glacier, there's this lost city that no one gets to. That's also the source of this wild magic, the howling winds, the undead that roam through the tunnels inside the glacier as they constantly grind and expand and collapse. And the wind is also, eroding away at the ice and blowing through and doing all of this. So we have the city could be associated with the starfall, or it could have just been the origin point. The nomads had escaped because maybe that part of their prophecy was when the star falls, so too will the city. And then we have an area like Dragonlance. Did they call it? Was it Ishtar? Was it Ishtar in Dragonlance? Anyway, that became the Tempest Sea. Although in this case, it's more of a glacier. And when people die, their souls go into the ice and are thought to expand the ice. And that's why you also see faces in the ice as they roam and move around, because it is an afterlife of sorts. But maybe in the wake of the war, especially, many people died and they saw that there was notable glacial advance. Let me catch up in chat here. Higher intelligence for civilized creatures does keep them from being completely subverted but not unchanged. It also allows for freedom of adaptation no matter what you choose the plant life to be, and you can still determine how it creates an ecology, but you can subvert some of the tiny details, like how acidic is the soil, with the trees have adapted to maintain a proper pH level. The one thing I think players might perk up at is a comet of X size breaking a tectonic plate might be a world ender. It could be. Certain circumstances, it hit just right. It's if it seems totally unreasonable, we can change the story. And that's the beauty of having these sessions as a DM, is to sit down and think about this, or just say, you know what, accept it as it is. If it was, a bunch of frozen gas, it's still solid, but maybe upon re-entry, a lot of that was burnt up, maybe even scattered, and which is how we get these interesting crystal shards that are still somehow solid after all this time, solid ice or eternal ice. There's could just be magic. There's a lot of different ways that we can go through and explain this. Or, and think of this too, if we just hand this map to our players, are they going to question, are those mountains part of the shattered crust from an impact? Or are they just going to accept it as it is? And you could reveal that later and either come up with, buy yourself time to come up with a reason, or they're just going to say, oh, I get it. And everything just happened how it did. Which is very convenient, because it's very convenient as a DM to have that happen. So I guess it depends on how, this is an interesting word to use, but how real you want your campaign to be. I think so. The Cataclysm, Flaming Mountain on the city of Ishtar, that sounds about right. Yeah, that's right. I think so. Ishtar does sound familiar, but it's been years since I read Dragonlance. The thing with D&D and the world-ending threat, oh, it must be Thursday, says Lazy Monkey. Well, and you know what? There's nothing saying that for a while, Shuford, maybe everything here did die. Or what didn't was affected, was irradiated by, well, radiation or magic or this psychic being's presence. And so everything that grows here did have a remnant of some kind. Did have some kind of, an origin that was normal elsewhere in generic Western fantasy outside this region land. But here, the trees all grow. Maybe as the trees grow, they also have a Coriolis effect. So all the trees have this twist to them. Or, again, the fish with 3 eyes or whatever else. So everything here can be just slightly off. Because it had to come back, but because of the mutagenic effects, it came back stronger and quicker. We get quick-growing trees. We get adapted. We have mushrooms that are desalinating water like a mangrove. Like a barrier reef of mangroves that are mushrooms that can filter so much salt from the sea that you're getting brackish water and even a thin strip of fresh water up by the coast. That's also being fed by the glacial melt-off. It could be ancient. Yeah, Shuford. Or magical radiation, Old Knock. That's we've gone too far. Magical radiation. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we deal radiant. Because I don't know if calling it holy damage is somehow, I don't know if that is done sort of a political correctness thing or why it's radiant damage. But if you want to look at it that way, paladins deal radiation damage all the time. Or that Lost City perished in the act of preventing the world-ending catastrophe. They saved the world but died. Oh, yeah. And so Lazy Monkey, in that regard, what if the glacier was meant to act in some way as a buffer or as a consequence of everyone in the city saying, well, if we don't give ourselves up, then everything is going to die. And so it could have been a ritual to help stop the totality of the event. That's very true. And so as we're writing our history, that could play into it. Hey, Azrael. By the way, Azrael, I have 4 boxes of Ravnica I brought home tonight. 2 of which you purchased yesterday. So I have another 2 if you wanted them. And at the store, I have at least 2 more, but maybe I have 4 for a full brick. I'd have to double check my store numbers. Toxic Avenger is a paladin, says Old Knock. Radiation itself is a type of energy exchange, so technically wouldn't be wrong. And you know, if any of you, have any of you read Starship Troopers? Before I say anything else, I want to see if this is, if people are going to get a point here. All right. If you've read Starship Troopers, not watched the movie's fine. You know, it's fun, campy, has the propaganda, and I enjoy it. Hey, Grimvex, in the book. Yeah, I know, but Lazy Monkey, they don't get the armor until, like, Starship Troopers 3 or something like that. In the book, the narrator is describing a supply planet that's a colony for Earth. And in so doing, he says that all of the vegetation and the life that exists on this colony world is very primitive. And the reason for it is because the radiation levels on the planet, just whatever cosmic rays or events or materials inside the planet, the radiation levels are very low. And so life, while it did happen, has never been challenged by radiation. Well, Azrael, then, we're going to pop open 4 boxes of Ravnica. And so radiation as a force, I mean, we think of it and we're like, that's terrible, because you can get cancer. And what is that but abnormal cell growth? What is abnormal cell growth but, and I'm not saying it's a good evolutionary thing, but it is your cells going in a different direction, trying something new, being challenged and being forced to adapt to this confrontational mix of energy. You remember that, Lazy Monkey? Yeah. So if very low mutation rates, life was never challenged there. Life never had to survive. And so all of the native plants are just getting wrecked by the wheat and the common earth plants because they've never had to fight. They're lazy. Because there wasn't that challenge. And so here we might have a very irradiated, whether through scientific radiation or magic or the combination of both, we have a place that was very challenging. You know, life tenuously held on in the wake of this event. And yet now look at it, it's thriving. And people have developed a society around it, especially this swamp society and this very interesting forest society who live among the trees. They're quick growing, they're different. It has caused this different take on the same event that occurred. And so, yeah, radiation can be it's a weapon, right? You can use radiation in a bad way. You can use it in a good way. Look at the nuclear knife that they can use to perform brain surgery just by focusing 2 beams of energy, and where the beams cross, there's enough energy to cause a physical a physical manifestation that can destroy tissue. Was it Cyberknife or something like that? Radiation's like water, it's a good thing, but too much can kill you. Man, Lazy Monkey, you gotta watch out. Dihydrogen monoxide is a killer. And frankly, we need more government intervention to limit or eradicate dihydrogen monoxide. This is 2019. And the fact that this is still a threat is embarrassing to us as a nation. Frankly, the less dihydrogen monoxide we have in our lives, the better. That's right. Shu, I want all of you to write your congressman. It needs strict regulation. I like the idea of the comet being a cosmic horror that is slowly assimilating the planet to produce more cosmic spores. And in that case then, Shuford, how about this? If we're making this sandbox, you know, as a DM, we haven't created a cohesive story. You know, we're not developing a series of milestones that are going to take our players from 1 to 20, but we're opening up a region for them to explore and put clues together. Well, as we discovered, the swamp folk have one key in the set of knowledge. The forest folk, through their library and their study, might very well have the other. And with the pragmatism of the forest folk here, what if it's put together that as much of a quote-unquote threat that this glacier is, what if, in a world, what if that is the final spell of that old city? That the glacier is a scab that is trying to slowly grow over the wound inflicted on the planet. And by telling a story like this, that is going to cause inspiration in our religiously or philosophically detached player characters, it will challenge the core foundations of both the swamp people and especially the forest people who are more secular about things. Because it's going to cause them to realize that there is a godlike being. And the one that they've been studying, you know, could very well be it. Or this godlike being has been manipulating them to believe there's the what's the Deepak Chopra, the Dr. Deepak Chopra quote? There is no enemy. The enemy is a manifestation of your not enemy, the devil. The devil is a projection of your ego to cover for the fact that there's no enemy. Shoot. If one of you has that quote and you could drop it in chat, I'd appreciate it. If you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, so the devil doesn't exist, but we make the devil exist because it covers for us, right? It's an externalization because we don't want to throw a rock at ourselves, but we want to throw a rock at a devil to make it go away. You know, forests produce a rightly massive amount of dioxygen, and I think this is a problem that should be addressed. While we're on the subject, has anyone heard of the Church of Euthanasia? Oh, you know what? By saying dioxygen also, Pneumonica? What? Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, 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 I love you. Do, 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 do. All right. Straight up now tell me, do you really want to love me forever? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Or are we just having fun? Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Is ozone? Does ozone make something acidic or basic, do you know? And if so, if we had a solid oxygen comet fall, could that explain, especially a mutagenic effect, but could this ozone be an influence on the plant life, wildlife, or the pH? And of course, you know, if it's solid oxygen, and I'm not saying that this couldn't be a cosmic horror that encased itself in oxygen, or it was encased in its cosmic travels through whatever reason. Trizine, hello and welcome. I have a campaign that has a comet that crashed into an Arctic land, melting the glacier which flooded the coastal cities. It radiates heat, which melts across the land, making the once snowfield into a marshy wasteland. I like it, Trizine. It makes sense. I think your players can explore it. It definitely creates a threat and an interesting set of circumstances for them to adventure in. Thank you for sharing that. Obviously, if you have more to share, please do so, because we're kind of exploring that right now, Trizine. The comet could also have been a toenail of a god clipped off and flying through the void until it impacted. It's just the beginning. Swamp people have the peanut butter, the forest people have the chocolate. When the religions align, it will give rise to a god of all confection, says Azrael. You know, I remember the dinosaurs episode. Boy, if that doesn't date me. I remember the I remember the sitcom Dinosaurs episode where chocolate and peanut butter was almost invented, but it was thrown out because it was seen as disgusting, because no one ever had it before. Was it Robbie? Whoever the son, kind of the teenage son, he dropped a chocolate bar in a jar of peanut butter, and he's like, oh, this is gross, and throws it out. Oxygen was the albumin of the Cosmic Horror's cosmic egg. Ozone is extremely toxic, says Zulerpai. And or the person, and so since we have this kind of, look, the whispers, these will-o-wisp people, as we designed them, all right, here, Exhibit A, flumps. As we designed them, they were actually more like will-o-wisp people, right? They have these light cores that are them, but they have these wispy bodies. The light cores could be something, you know, how they evolved, and maybe that could create this ozone, or is an effect of it. But their misty bodies could also be a reflection of the vapor or the effect. So in a sense, the people here might have even taken up the image of the comet that fell. And, well, if the comet is a reflection of this cosmic being or this cosmic horror, but they don't realize that they look like that which fell. They take it as, well, this is what we look like now. We've lived here, and we have been affected by the area, as has everything else, and this is just what we look like. Jarnix, and or the person you call an enemy is an exaggerated aspect of your own shadow self. Oh yeah, wait, short version of your enemy is your own self in a different uniform. Okay, thank you for finishing that out, Jarnix. I never did well with chemistry. Physics was my thing, but I want to say that everything has a pH level that dictates whether it's a base or acid. So ozone, I'd imagine, could, but I have no basis to know which way it would go. I doubt it would be impactful. Yeah, not the mama, says Lazy Monkey. Ozone oxidizes into sulfates and sulfides. You can get sulfuric acid from ozone, water, and either sulfur or sulfur dioxide. Yeah, so it's kind of like carbon dioxide, I guess, is acidic because you can get carbonic acid from it. Nice, saved me from having to read this dissertation on ozonation of natural organic matter. And this is the type of service you can expect here on the Matty Morgs channel, everyone. Also, ozonolysis is a chain of ozone reactions that leads to organic alkalines. Well, geez. Now we're just being finicky. I want a simple answer. Will it melt my finger if I put it in because it's an acid, or will it melt my finger because I put it in because it's an alkaline? And by the way, why are all the spells acid, but instead, why don't we shoot Melf's basic arrows? It is time for alkaline. Wizards, rise up. It is time for alkaline. Dragonborn base race, not a base breath. Dragonborn base race, but not a base breath. How about the planet itself is using the glacier as a scab? Yes. Yeah, that was brought up, Bubonic One. This is a made-up world for D&D, so it doesn't have to follow real-world physics. Because Melf ain't no basic. Ain't no basic bee. Old Knock, I'm totally going to add Melf's base arrow to my game now. It's all about that base, So, in our own way, I mean, because we're bringing up topics here. I mean, do we have a fully fleshed out forest society? We have a good base for it. We have a good start. But I'm going to have to get up and take a break. And you know what? When I come back, well, let's pop open some boxes for Azrael. And let's map this out. Let's continue to talk chemistry, evolution. Let's have this conversation. But let's grab a drink and a snack first. And, you know, if you got to use a restroom or just stretch or whatever, let's take 10 minutes and do that, everyone. I'm ashamed of you pandering to the base. The Guy Effect says Bubonic One. I'm not sure if this channel is PG-13, Shuford. That being said, you know, if the conversation in context isn't just breaking down to herder, there's boobs, then I'm fine if we get into advanced topics or things that we might consider to be the big three taboo conversational topics of sex, religion, and politics. As long as within context, we are talking about it, we're examining it, we're considering possibilities, and we're doing so in the realm of exploring or making a game, I'm fine with that. So if there's something that you're like, well, I'm not sure, just bring it up, broadly, and we'll see if we can work it into the conversation. If not, yeah, I appreciate the respect that you have for the arbitrary line that I keeping the channel PG-13. Oh, definitely PG, but probably goofy. More physics. Context matters, exactly. Most of what's been going on has been chem and not much physics. Well, then we'll come back and talk physics as we also talk map making, topography, as we go through and we do maybe some geography and such. So religious sex for political reasons is right out. I gotta take a break, everyone. I'll be right back. Y'all are too much. Jeez.